I want your opinion on Joseph Woll, and then what I think, what I believe you think the Leafs need moving forward, because I think Samsonov's they're probably going to walk from, so they've got Joseph Woll under contract, good contract. But what do you think the Leafs need to do in net with Joseph Woll there, but maybe not showing that he can be an everyday guy yet?
Noodles, I think they need me or you in our prime. They need a guy that is
not me.
that's been around a little bit, that can play a few games, and a little bit of experience. For me, a guy that I think of is like a Cam Talbot. A veteran guy that's like serviceable, that can go in, can play minutes, and because there is that black cloud over Joseph Woll about his injuries, right? It's undeniable, but he can get the job done. We've seen it when he's healthy and he's going. He can play very well.
But Carter, I have to interrupt you for a second. Let me just propose something to you. We've all seen what happens, and we're talking about a young kid who has trouble staying healthy, okay? So you're talking about the percentages of him being out for long durations is probably high. It would be hard to argue that would be high. So then if you got a guy that you're going to lean on and say, hey, it's your net now, you're the guy, and if you go out and get that Cam Talbot, I don't know. Why not like a quality starter with a couple years left on his deal where you're not committing long-term, but if you got to lean on him, and you just let Joseph Woll marinate and say it's not quite your net, and maybe you want to stay healthy and you're going to fight to stay healthy because that guy's really good and he's going to have the net. As opposed to, and I don't know who that guy is. I know Markstrom's probably got a couple years left on his deal. But instead of saying, that older guy who's a veteran guy, they already got that guy in Martin Jones there. So why not try for a real quality guy that's going to play for a couple years? Because Jamie talks about it all the time. Goaltenders don't mature until they're later in their 20s. So just wait for the kid and show some patience, and maybe it's not going to be his net.
No, that's also a good theory, but it's what you can afford too, right? It's not like these goalies are just
fair point.
Markstrom's going to be in high demand, and I agree with that. And the hardest part in this goalie market, in my opinion, is if it's not homegrown, it's hard to compete, right? It's hard.
I was just using Markstrom as an example. I agree. Ilk.
But for me, I like that side of it too. And I think they're at a point now in their career where they need to have someone that's going to push more and get this team over the top. Because obviously, year after year, getting bumped in the first round or second round isn't really going to do it. And the way that it doesn't look like it's going to get any easier in the East with the way Boston obviously continues to win. Swayman looks great. And again, playing Florida doesn't look like they're slowing down anytime soon.
No, and
Tampa's probably going to have a response.
They probably will, yeah. And at some point, Ottawa, Montreal, Detroit was knocking on the door and they fell off late. Yeah. Buffalo, yeah, exactly. It's not going to wait for you forever. I think in a perfect world, Joseph Woll, it would be a very different energy around this team if he started 45 games last year, every playoff game. Played Game 7, played great, and they won. Then they lose in the second round of Florida in 7. It's totally different, right? You're looking at him like, okay, it's established. He's your number one, and he's cheap. Perfect. Then Cam Talbot makes a lot of sense. You need someone to play 30 games, right, on the cheap. The problem is I don't see how – I agree with O. I think it would be malpractice for the Maple Leafs front office to come in and pencil in – anything more than 30 games for Joseph Woll. And if he plays more, that's a bonus. That's great. But if you go in just saying we're blindly hoping, then I think that's a recipe for disaster in the end. That said, I don't think you just force feed a long-term contract on a guy you don't love. So it's complicated. It's not, you need a tandem. You need someone else. Ideally, you find someone you can lock up for term and you just allow the two of them to battle it out. That would be great. But it's not going to be an easy position to fill, but it's a mandatory one because if they don't have goaltending, they're just like every other team in the league. Your aspirations can only go so far.
Well, and if you actually, guys, if you go through the league now, if you look at the stats at the end of the year in the regular season, pretty much every team uses 3 goaltenders. Not just 2. That's only rare. I think there's only 8 teams. I'd have to go back and check that only used 2 goalies this year. The rest use 3, 4, 5, depending on injuries and stuff. So you need 3 capable guys. And if you don't have one of those 8 guys that plays 60, the Hellebuck, the Vasilevsky, the Demko, you name it, the Ottinger, then you've got to be in a tandem situation. I think I think Joseph Woll could be penciled in for 30 to 40, but you need somebody, and it might be either the Markstrom or the Allmark or somebody who, if Saros is available. But to Carter's point, what are you paying for these guys? Because you're not getting them for free. And, somebody good has got to go out the door to acquire those guys. Mm-hmm. But I think it's needed. I really do think it's needed for the stability of this organization, is for the manager to sleep at night and go, I got a tandem that I'm not worried about because I've got good goaltenders that can go in. Don Sweeney sleeps every night knowing I've got the best tandem in the league. You know?
Like a baby.
Yeah.
Brisebois sleeps, Cheveldayoff sleeps every night going, that
Jamie,
guy's going to play.
Only 10 of them sleep about their goaltenders. The rest sleep like me. They're up at 4 a.m. Restless.
But for me, the Bruins, like, Sweeney's a good talk. Like, when I left in St. Louis, I had my big year in St. Louis, and I was 31 years old before I signed in Buffalo. And Boston was a team that wanted me, that approached me, that was all over me. That was kind of it was either going to Boston or going to Buffalo. But they had Tuukka Rask, and they wanted me to play 35 to 40 games because they wanted to manage Tuukka Rask. That was different, right? But I also wanted the freedom to try to go to Buffalo and try to become a starter, try to throw my hat in the ring and see what came of it. Obviously, it didn't work out. But in the same sense, what the Bruins have done with that 1A, 1B, resting a guy, having no matter who they have, because that's when Halak went there. They had Khudobin. They've had guys that can fill in valuable time, where I think that model is more the traditional model now, where obviously getting Swayman and Allmark kind of worked out perfectly, right? I don't think they predicted Swayman becoming what he became to be now. But at that same point, I think the Bruins have done a great job of setting up their goalies for success come playoff time, managing rest, and a few of those runs they've been on with Tuukka Rask, I think the way they manage him during the year. So I think it's a model most teams are trying to get to. The problem is, how do you get to those two guys that can both get the job done?
Yeah, easier said than done, but that's the role of the GM, right? Yeah. Fans, media, we can yell and scream about it. They got to get it right.